Okay, perfect. We are live. Okay, so I wanted to talk more. Not read more. I want to start talking. Today I want to make a presentation on. Oh wait, hold up. There we go. That's better. So I want to talk about reverberation. Reverberation is caused by the multiple reflections of sound that occur within an enclosed space. So when sound is produced, such as a person speaking or music playing, the sound waves travel outward in all directions. Instead of being absorbed completely when they strike the walls, ceiling, or floor, many of these waves bounce back into the room. These reflections will overlap with one another and with the original sound, creating a persistence of sound even after the sources stop producing it. The strength and duration of the reverberation depend on materials and shape of the room. In the space with hard, smooth surfaces like concrete or glass, the reflections are stronger because those materials reflect more sound than they absorb. This makes the reverberation last longer, giving the room a lively or echoey quality. On the other hand, with a room filled with soft materials like carpets, curtains, or foam panels, which we're going to get into later in the video, much of the sound energy is absorbed rather than reflected. As a result, the reverberation is shorter and the sound feels clearer and more controlled. Essentially, reverberation happens because sound energy continues to bounce around in a room until it is gradually absorbed by surfaces or dissipates through the air. It's a natural part of how sound behaves in enclosed environments and plays a major role in how we perceive the acoustics of a place. So we're going to get into how it works. Reverberation creates an atmosphere by shaping the sense of space and depth that we perceive in sound. When sound waves reflect and linger in a room, our brains interpret those reflections as clues about the size, shape, and texture of the environment around us. In this way, reverb doesn't just make sound last longer, it makes it feel alive and more dimensional. In a large echoing hall or cathedral, for example, the long reverberation time makes sound seem grand, spacious, and immersive. Each note or word blends slightly with the next, creating a feeling of openness and emotional weight. This is why music performed in such spaces, often feels powerful and resonant. In contrast, a small carpeted room with very little reverberation feels intimate and controlled. Sound doesn't travel far, so voices and instruments appear close and personal. Reverb also affects emotion and mood. A lush, lingering reverb can evoke feelings of warmth, nostalgia, or mystery, while a short, dry reverb can create a sense of focus, precision, or even tension. Sound designers and musicians use reverb intentionally to set a tone of a scene or a song, adding depth to vocals, giving instruments a natural blend, or making a listener feel as though they're standing in a vast space or a tiny one. In essence, reverb acts as an invincible acoustic backdrop. It fills the empty spaces between sounds, connecting them together and giving context to how we experience them. Whether in music, film, or even architecture, reverb helps transform simple sound into a rich, atmospheric experience that feels grounded in space. Now, there is a difference between reverb and echo. Reverb and echo are both effects caused by sound reflections. I got a picture here, gives you a little visual representation of what I'm talking about, although it's a picture, doesn't do too good of a job. But they differ in how those reflections reach our ears and how we perceive them. Echoes happen when sound effects reflects off a surface far enough away that the reflected sound reaches your ears after a noticeable delay, typically more than zero point 0.1 seconds later. This delay allows you to clearly distinguish the repetition from the original sound. For example, if you shout in a canyon and you hear your voice repeat, "Hello, hello, hello," that's an echo. The reflected sound has traveled a much greater distance before returning to you, making it arrive late enough to be heard as a distinct copy. In simple terms, reverb is the smooth continuation of sound caused by many quick reflections blending together, while echo is a clear repetition of the same sound caused by one or a few reflections separated by a noticeable delay. Reverb gives sound a sense of space and atmosphere, like we talked about, while echo emphasizes distance and repetition. Now I want to talk about no, we already. Oh, I just had a slide. Perfect. Okay, well, there's a slide that goes into what I just talked about then. But yeah, I have a picture right there of the echo being separated while the reverb is all blended with each other. But I want to talk about what does reverb look like on a sound wave, actually. Reverb affects a sound wave by spreading out its energy over time, making the sound's decay more gradual instead of abrupt. When the sound is dry, it exists mostly as a direct sound, a clean, well-defined waveform that starts sharply and ends quickly once the source stops producing it. When we add reverb, however, the waveform gains a tail that trails off as the reflections from the environment blend back into the signal. Imagine clapping your hands in two different places. First, a small carpeted room, and then a large cathedral. In the carpeted room, the sound is short and crisp. The waveform would show a single strong spike followed by a rapid decline to silence. As you can see on the picture there, A and C show exactly that. In the cathedral, however, the waveform would start the same way, but then fade away as hundreds of reflections overlap and decay at different rates. This creates a smoother, more textured shape that looks stretched out rather than sharply cut off. Visually, the difference can be summarized like this. A dry sound wave has sharp, clean peaks and a steep drop-off after the main sound. It looks compact and controlled, with silence returning almost immediately after the initial sound. A wet sound wave, one with reverb, extends over time. The main peak is followed by a long tapering tail where the amplitude gradually decreases instead of stopping suddenly. The waveform looks denser and more filled because of the overlapping reflections. And I just want to mention the difference between wet and dry mix. A wet and dry mix is how much reverb is blended in the original signal. A wet mix has more of the effect, while dry keeps it subtle, so the effect is not there. So reverb transforms a sound wave by something isolated and contained into something more spacious and blended, mimicking how sound naturally behaves in real acoustic environments. It turns flat, studio-like sound into one that feels like it exists within a physical space. So when, where, and how would you use this? Reverb is used to add depth, realism, and emotional tone, like we talked about a little bit before. The way it's applied depends on the context, however. Whether it's music production, film, live performance, or even architecture, we also mentioned that as well. So let's talk about when you would use it. Reverb is used when a sound feels too flat, lifeless, or unnatural. A dry recording, like a voice captured in a soundproof booth, can sound dull and disconnected from space. Adding reverb makes it feel as though it's occurring in a real environment. Musicians and sound engineers often use reverb when mixing vocals or instruments that need to blend naturally in a track, or when a sense of space in a film or video game scene, and even to evoke emotion. Long reverb for warmth, grandeur. Short reverb for an intimacy and clarity. So in contrast, you avoid or minimize reverb when you need precision, like in podcast, dialogue-heavy films, or even conference calls. Where to use it? It can stimulate any environment or simulate any environment, from a small bedroom to a massive cathedral. So the where refers to both the type of space being recreated and the placement within a mix. So, for example, a vocal track might use a subtle room reverb to make the singer sound close and natural. Drums might use a larger hall reverb to sound big and powerful, though in films reverb can match the environment. A bathroom scene might have bright reflective reverb, while a forest might have soft diffuse reflections. Reverb can also be used creatively. Electronic musicians, for instance, might use surreal, heavily processed reverbs to create dreamy or otherworldly textures. Now let's talk about how to use it. Using reverb effectively is about balance. Too much makes it sound muddy or distant. Too little can make it dry or sound artificial. Sound engineers usually apply reverb on a separate aux channel, so multiple instruments or voices can share the same acoustic space without being over-processed individually. Some key settings to adjust is the reverb time, or the decay, which is how long the sound lingers. You want to use short decay for tight spaces, and then you want to use a long decay for grand ambient effects. Pre-delay, which is the time between the original sound and the first reflection, used to keep clarity before the reverb starts. And then, of course, you got your mix level, which is your wet and dry, but we already talked about that earlier, thankfully. By fine-tuning these settings, you can make a sound feel like it's coming from a cozy room, a spacious concert hall, or even an infinite void, each creating a different mood and sense of space. Next, I want to talk about something pretty important, or should be important later on as you get to know more about this. Acoustic panels. You've probably seen these just about everywhere in a studio and many other places, I'm sure. Acoustic panels are one of the most effective tools for reducing reverberation in a space. They work by absorbing sound energy, especially mid and high frequency reflections, so that fewer waves bounce around the room. Instead of sound reflecting repeatedly off hard surfaces, the panels convert much of that sound energy into a small amount of heat within their porous materials, preventing excessive echo and creating a clearer, more controlled acoustic environment. When sound waves hit a bare wall, most of the energy reflects back into the room, causing the sound to linger. By installing acoustic panels, you interrupt that process. I apologize. Been a long day. The fibers or foam inside the panels have a complex structure full of anti-air pockets. As sound enters these spaces, friction dissipates the wave's energy, shortening the reverberation time. This means speed becomes easier to understand. Sound gains clarity and overall noise levels to feel more comfortable. Where and how you place the panels matters as much as how you use Where and how you place the panels matters as much as many you use. They're typically mounted on walls as first reflection points, the spots where sound from speakers or voices first hits the surface. Ceilings are also common locations, particularly in offices, studios, classrooms, and restaurants, where the ceiling clouds or hanging baffles absorb sound without taking up any wall space. For rooms with hard flooring, use panels on opposite walls helps prevent flutter echoes, rapid reflections that cause a harsh metallic ringing. The type of panel and material also influences how much reverb is reduced. Panels made from fabric-wrapped fiberglass, mineral wool, or acoustic foam are common, and we're going to get more into depth about the types of acoustic panels. We already have a list here, but I'm going to speak more on each one individually. But as of right now, I just want to close this one off. Acoustic panels help transform a room from sounding boomy or echoey to one that feels clearer, comfortable, and natural. By strategically placing panels on reflective surfaces and choosing the right materials, you can significantly decrease the reverb and tailor the acoustic quality of any space, whether it's a home studio, classroom, office, or concert hall. Now I want to talk about the different types. I want to get into that because we have quite a few here. As you can see, we have 7. That's still a lot. So first off, I want to start with the fabric-wrapped acoustic panels. The one that I believe that was one of the first one I just mentioned. These are one of the most common types. They consist of an absorptive core, often fiberglass or mineral wool covered in fabric. The fabric allows sound to pass through and reach the core, where energy is absorbed. These panels are effective at reducing mid and high frequency reverb and are popular in offices, classrooms, and studios because they're visually versatile and can be customized with colors or patterns. And actually, before I go to the other few, there we go. I have a chart of the first 4, and then I got a continuation of the other 3 right after this, but I'm going to show this while I'm talking about them. Next we have the foam panels. Foam panels are typically made, and I apologize for getting this completely wrong, but they're made from polyurethane. Oh, okay, that's pretty good. Or melamine. Okay, that's pretty good too. Foam, and are designed to absorb sound, particularly mid to high frequencies. They often have pyramid wedge or egg crate shapes to increase surface area and entrap sound waves more efficiently. Foam panels are lightweight, easy to install, and widely used in home studios. The picture that you just saw was actually foam panels, so there you go. However, they are less effective at absorbing low frequency sound, so keep that in mind. Depending on the type of music or movies or whatever you're doing for your sound, you want to keep in mind the frequencies that you're using. Number 3, we have perforated wood or MDF panels. These panels use a hard surface with perforations to absorb sound. Behind the perforated layer is usually an air cavity or absorption material. They combine aesthetic appeal with functional absorption and are often used in concert halls, auditoriums, or high-end office spaces. Perforated panels can absorb mid and high frequencies while maintaining a stylish, natural wood appearance. Baffles and clouds are suspended panels, either hanging from the ceiling or mounted vertically, designed to intercept sound waves traveling through the air. Clouds are often rectangular, ironic, and mounted horizontally, while baffles hang vertically. They are particularly useful in large open spaces like gyms, cafeterias, and open plan offices, where wall-mounted panels alone might not sufficiently control reverberation. Bass traps are specialized panels designed to absorb low-frequency sound, which is harder to control. Low frequencies tend to accumulate in corners and along walls, creating boomy or muddy acoustics. Bass traps are usually thicker and denser than standard panels and are placed in corners where they can absorb standing waves and reduce even uneven bass response in a room, making music and speech sound cleaner. Unlike absorptive panels, diffusers scatter sound waves rather than absorbing them. They break up reflections and disperse sound energy in different directions, reducing harsh echoes and flutter while preserving a room's sense of space. Diffusers are often used in a recording studio, performance halls, and even home theaters where clarity is important, but some liveliness is still desired. Hybrid panels combine absorption and diffusion in a single unit. They might have a dense absorptive layer behind a diffusive surface or combine different materials to tackle both high and mid frequencies and even low frequencies. These panels are useful in spaces where you want balanced acoustics, reducing harsh reflections without making the room feel too dead or overly dampened. And then right here I have the other ones as well. Wait a minute. Hold up. Oh, okay. Perfect. The choice of panel depends on the frequencies you need to control, the size and shape of the room, and the aesthetic considerations. Often, a combination of several types of absorption, diffusion, and bass trap produces the most balanced and pleasing acoustic environment. I also want to talk about other materials to decrease the reverberation in a space. First, we have mineral wool. Mineral wool is made from spun rock or slag fibers, forming a dense, fibrous material that traps sound waves. It's very effective at absorbing mid to high frequencies and when thick enough, it can also reduce lower frequencies. So that's pretty much the best of all worlds, really. Mineral wool is often used in a fabric-wrapped panels, bass traps, or wall when ceiling insulation. It's a fire-resistant and durable, making it suitable for commercial buildings, studios, and home theaters. And there we go. There's a table for you as well. Fiberglass panels are made from compressed glass fibers. They absorb sound similarly to mineral wool, with excellent performance in the mid and high frequency range, and are often cheaper and lighter than stone wool. Acoustic fiberglass boards are commonly used in wall panels, ceiling tiles, and acoustic clouds. They can also be wrapped in fabric for aesthetic purposes. Now, acoustic foam, we actually spoke about this with the foam panels. So I'll skip that one because I'm pretty much going to say the same thing. Fabric and felt. Fabrics are in felt panels, often made from polyester or wool fibers, act as a soft covering for absorption cores or as standalone panels. They allow sound to pass through and be absorbed by underlying materials, while also contributing aesthetically. Felt panels are increasingly popular in offices because they are lightweight, eco-friendly, and visually customizable, providing both sound absorption and design flexibility. We get to perforated wood. We spoke about this before, but I'll explain a little bit more about it. Perforated wood or medium density fiber wood. I don't believe I spoke at all about medium density fiber wood when I don't believe I did. No, I didn't. Okay. These panels absorb sound by combining a hard reflective surface with an air cavity or backing material behind it. Sound passes through the perforations. Yeah. I already spoke about all this with the other panels, so I'll skip that one as well. We also have cotton panels. Cellulose and cotton panels are made from recycled or natural fibers pressed into dense boards. They provide mid to high frequency absorption and are often marketed as environmentally friendly alternatives to fiberglass or mineral wood. These panels can be installed on walls or ceilings or used as freestanding acoustic partitions. And then we got probably the most common, if you ask me, I'd argue this is the most common one, is carpet, curtains, or upholstery. Everyone's got at least one of these, right? Soft furnishings absorb sound naturally by reducing reflections from hard surfaces. Carpets, heavy curtains, and upholstered furniture are particularly effective for high frequency absorption, helping to dampen room reverberation in homes, offices, or theaters. They are usually supplementary to more specialized acoustic panels, but are valuable for creating a comfortable, quiet environment. In summary, the choice of material depends on the frequencies you want to control. The room size and whether aesthetics or eco-friendliness are important to you. Often combining materials like mineral wool cores wrapped in fabric or foam panels in front of wood creates a balanced acoustic environment that handles low, mid, and high frequencies efficiently. And then lastly, how is reverb even measured? But before we get to that, I want to describe something pretty important. What is a decibel and how is it used to measure sound and reverb levels? So, a decibel is a unit used to measure the intensity of sound. It's a logarithmic scale, meaning that each increase of 10 decibels represents a tenfold increase in sound intensity. This scale is used because the human ear can detect an enormous range of sound levels, from the faintest whisper to a loud jet engine, and a linear scale would be impractical. For example, normal conversation is around 60 decibels. A busy street might be 80 decibels, and a rock concert can reach 110 to 120 decibels. Sound above 120 decibels can be painful and potentially damaging to hearing. Decibels don't measure sound directly in terms of pressure or energy alone. They are a ratio of a particular sound pressure relative to a reference level. In air, the reference is usually the quietest sound the average human ear can detect, which is 20 micropascals. Because it's logarithmic, a small change in decibels corresponds to a large change in perceived loudness. For instance, a sound that increases by 10 decibels is roughly perceived as twice as loud, even though the actual sound energy has increased tenfold. Now, reverberation time, or RT60, is the time it takes for a sound to decay by 60 decibels. After the source stops making noise. In simpler terms, It measures how long a sound hangs around in a space. For example, a concert hall might have an RT60 of about 2 seconds. Good for rich musical sound. A classroom or studio might have an RT60 of 0.4 to 0.6 seconds, which is clearer for space or speech. Think of it like this. A loud sound, like a clap or burst of noise, is made in a room. A microphone then records how long it takes for the sound to drop by 60 decibels. The time measured equals the RT60, or the reverb time. Acousticians use devices like a sound level meter or computer software to calculate it precisely. And then I have some reference links. I'll let you guys download this PowerPoint so you can reference to these, but I might have the link actually in the description of this video as well, just so you guys can learn a little bit more about reverberation. And then I'll probably be back next week to speak about something else. This was a lot of fun. I want to do it again. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll be back next week. Thank you.